Hello, everyone. I hope that you're doing safe and well wherever you are, and welcome to my presentation. So, today I'm going to talk about dealing with climate change skepticism, and let's jump right in. So, first, let us look at what it means to be skeptical. Scientific skepticism is healthy. In fact, science, by its very nature, is skeptical. But genuine skepticism means that you consider the full body of evidence before coming to any conclusions. Climate change is now a crisis. It is no longer a guess or an assumption that scientists are making. And if you're still one of those people that believe that climate change doesn't exist, then you're simply a denier. You're no longer a skeptic. When we take a close look at arguments expressing climate skepticism, what we often see is cherry picking of pieces of evidence which only favor them, while rejecting any data that doesn't fit into the desired picture. And this isn't skepticism, this is simply ignoring the facts of science. First, let us have a look at all the different types of people that might deny climate change. We have climate skeptics who don't necessarily doubt all aspects of climate science, but they may have issues with reliability of methodology and would probably engage in scholarly disagreements through literature. They might have some questions regarding the credibility of some aspects of climate models. Then we have climate agnostics. They are people that are simply uninterested in science, and this includes climate science. They do not engage in any type of debates or look for any credible information, which simply means that they have no idea what's going on. And lastly, we have climate deniers. These are people who associate climate science with conspiracy. They're people who think that scientists are incompetent or might have ulterior economic or social motives to reject climate change. They might be climate naives, climate conspiracists, or climate opportunists. Coming to the reasons why people deny climate change, first we have scientific denial. This is the type of denial where the science of climate change is not settled. Deniers claim that climate change is just a part of the natural cycle of the earth and that climate models are unreliable. Some people even suggest that CO2 is such a small part of the atmosphere that it cannot have such a large heating effect. And then there's the idea that climate change is too expensive to fix. A lot of economists suggest that we could fix climate change right now if we spend 1% of the world's GDP. But if we don't do anything, by 2050 it can cost us over 20% of the world's GDP. Most deniers in this category are protecting the fossil fuel industry, which receives a shocking $5.2 trillion in annual subsidies, which amounts for 6% of the world's GDP. Some people even argue that climate change is good for us. Oh my god, can you believe it? They believe that longer summers in the temperate zone will make farming more productive and that plants can use the excess carbon dioxide to grow better. And coming to politicians, they argue that there is no point in taking action because other countries are not doing anything. But the problem is that not all countries are equally responsible for climate change. 25% of the human produced carbon dioxide in the atmosphere is generated by the US, and the other 22% is produced by the EU. So, even though all countries have to participate, developed countries have an ethical responsibility to lead the way in cutting emissions. And the final climate change denial is the argument that we should not rush into anything given the uncertainty raised by the other four areas of denial. Deniers argue that we will be much richer and much more technologically equipped in the future, so we will be able to fix climate change better. In the next few parts of the presentation, we're going to have a look at some psychological phenomenon that can be associated with climate change skepticism. So before that, let us understand what core beliefs are. Core beliefs are those beliefs which people cherish most deeply. Usually they develop from childhood and they may intensify through life's experiences. Core beliefs are inflexible, rigid, and incredibly sensitive to being challenged. Your brain tends to protect these beliefs like a battle station, and defends any new concept that's against it. Why do we easily soften to some ideas but not others? Why do we get so worked up when presented with evidence counter to our beliefs? And why do we not only ignore evidence but dig our heels even deeper and believe more strongly in the opposing arguments? Why is it that by providing more evidence, it makes someone less likely to believe in an idea? In the world of neuroscience, this strange behavior is called the backfire effect, and it is a well documented psychological behavior. At the University of Southern California's Brain and Creativity Institute, a study was conducted where participants were placed into an MRI machine. Once inside, they were presented with arguments that strongly opposed their political beliefs. For example, that laws restricting gun ownership should be more restrictive or that gay marriage should not be legalized. What the study revealed is that the part of the brain which responds to physical threat also responds to an intellectual one. And this area of the brain is known as the amygdala. It is the emotional core of the mind. Unfortunately, this makes us biologically react to threatening information the same way we would react to being attacked by a predator. The next phenomenon we're going to look at is the confirmation bias. And to explain this, I've chosen a part of a small video. So let's watch it.
Confirmation bias is a tendency to look for, interpret, and recall information in ways that affirm our preconception. Whenever we encounter objective facts on an issue, we look at them through the lens of our own beliefs. As a result, we see and overrate where the two intercept. The bias is strongest for emotionally charged issues or when we search for desired outcomes. Wrapped inside popular narratives, cultural beliefs, and family values, a confirmation bias often gets passed on for generations. The priest learned from his ancestors that God is behind everything. The atheist was raised within a family that believed only in scientific knowledge. When we are confronted with unfamiliar or new situations, a bias helps us to draw fast conclusions. If every encounter with a stranger would require us to think of all sorts of possible outcomes, we would not come to any conclusions. Economically speaking, it would be too costly. To survive in a dangerous world, we learn to operate like storytelling, pattern-seeking animals. Each one of us thinking that our story in our head is the right one. Today, we can afford to slow down and think more deeply about certain issues. When we do this, we can become aware of our own biases. We begin to realize that things are often more complicated than we thought.
If you want to watch the full video, you can find the link in the description. So basically, a confirmation bias is a type of cognitive bias that involves favoring information which confirms your already existing beliefs. It is a tendency to process information by only looking for information that confirms your beliefs. Essentially, it is a biased approach to decision making. If we think about why us humans even have a confirmation bias, one of the explanations is that it is an efficient way to process information. Humans are bombarded with information in the social world and cannot take the time to carefully process every piece of information to form unbiased conclusions. Human decision making and information processing is often biased because people are limited to interpreting information from their own point of view. So people need to process information quickly to protect themselves from harm. Another explanation is that we have a confirmation bias to protect one's self esteem. People like to feel good about themselves, and discovering that a belief that they highly value is incorrect doesn't make them feel good, does it? Therefore, people seek information which supports their already existing beliefs. And any information which suggests that one holds an inaccurate beliefs shows that they may not be so intelligent. And if you want to have a closer look at how confirmation bias and climate action is related, I recommend you watch this video. The link is in the description box. Coming to how us humans actually process and collect data, let's look at what echo chambers are. An echo chamber is a term that describes a situation where certain ideas, beliefs, or data points are reinforced through repetition of a closed system. This system does not allow the movement of alternative or competing ideas. In an echo chamber, there is implication that certain ideas or outcomes win out because of the unfairness of how the input is gathered. In the context of social media and other interactive platforms, we can see that technologies often select bits of data from a general source according to heuristics or learning algorithms. Most users can actually notice their social media feed turning into an echo chamber of common and similar ideas which they think about. Now that we've seen many ways in which human beings are biased, which could actually lead to climate skepticism, let us look at how we can effectively use psychological concepts to bring about climate action. What is the window of tolerance? A window of tolerance is the amount of stress we can tolerate while remaining integrated, which means being in touch with our thoughts and feelings. Every one of us has a threshold beyond which we tend to go into the edges of our window. If we are pushed outside our window, we can go into collapse and have a chaotic response of depression or despair, or even have a rigid response of denial or anger. So every time you see a new climate report or a documentary which emotionally triggers you, you lose your integrity and your performance level significantly drops. And then there's the situation of a double bind in which people feel stuck. They care deeply about climate change and its consequences, but at the same time, they feel that their actions are insignificant. In such situations, people tend to push away their experience and it appears that they don't care, but this is not the case. They actually care a lot, but they just don't know what to do about it. In this situation, if we try to motivate people, it can actually backfire and lead to a numbing effect. So, what is the solution? How do we get people to cooperate? The answer lies in attunement. Attunement is a feeling of being in sync, when we feel understood and accepted exactly where we are. We must bring attunement into every aspect of our work, especially for those who are working in the environmental field. Thinking about how you feel and becoming compassionate is very important. When we feel understood and calm, we move into a higher level of functioning and it brings out the best results in people. Thank you for your attention and I hope that you enjoyed my presentation.